You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today's episode kicks off our 6th season of Boobies and Newbies podcast reviews. But before we dive too deep into it, and believe me, you're going to want to take the time to grab something to eat because this episode is sure to make you hungry, let's cover some business first. You can always catch up on past episodes of Boobies and Newbies on your favorite podcast app or on boobiesandnewbies.com. If you're a fan of the show and you've got a few minutes to spare, I would greatly appreciate a positive review on Apple Podcasts. And last but not least, if you would like to show the podcast a little extra love and support, might I recommend you join us on Patreon. We've got monthly patron-only events, early sneak peeks, bonus clips, and so much more, and you gain instant access to it for as little as $1 per month. Now, you will find links for all of the above in today's show notes, but enough of that. Let's discuss romance. Please join me in welcoming today's guest, host of the Shelf Addiction podcast, Tamara. Welcome, Tamara.
Hey, Kelly. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you because it only felt right since I was lucky enough to guest on an episode of Shelf Addiction earlier this year.
Yes, which was actually a very good episode, and you guys should come and check it out because it was a fun time.
It was so fun, and honestly, I loved the book we read. Like, I am all for, outside of romance, I typically read mystery and thriller, which I feel like at first glance probably seems odd because it's like lovey-dovey versus like killing her with a chainsaw. But
right.
I just feel like they complement each other. Like I'm getting the extremes of both sides.
I agree. That's why I'm like happily will read a romance because I think the same way. After several months of murder and death, let's bring on the feel good. I use a balance as well.
Yeah, it's the same way I can watch Bridgerton or, Virgin River and then turn on, a week's worth of Dateline and just watch, or Deadly Women. That's the other one I love. I love Deadly Women. They do bad reenactments of, women who have killed. Oh, it's great. I love it.
Gosh. I need to find that and check it out. It's right up my alley.
So good. Reenactment murder shows are like one of my favorite things ever. And the cheesier the acting, the better.
That's awesome. I love it.
I will hook you up with that. I think it's on Hulu, but we will for sure verify that. But now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like there's not enough of, with all the things that we see in romance, I feel like I haven't seen enough of true crime coming into romance. Like, somebody's a true crime podcaster or, yeah. I feel like there's romantic suspense, obviously, right? But yeah, I would love to see, maybe it's a weird thing to want to cross over, but I am just somebody who always wants to combine all of the things that I love.
Someone will write it. If there is an audience for everything, and I think that is a fun idea. So someone out there, if you're a writer, write that and then tell us about it, and we'll read it. I'll read it.
Yeah, I will say there is a new release. I want to say by the time we release this episode, the book will be in the world, and it is called Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. And I haven't read it yet. I do have an advanced copy on my Kindle, and I'm kind of hoping it's going to fill that void that I've been looking for.
Okay, tell me if it does. Because I'll rely on your POV on that. So if you say it's great, I should check it out. I will check it out.
That's a lot of pressure, but I will take that on.
Okay, you take the challenge.
Now, you don't typically read and review romance for Shelf Addiction. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do like to read for Shelf Addiction?
Okay, well, shelf addiction kind of like came about because I love talking about books, all kind of books. And initially, I was really at that time really into paranormal romance. And that is like one of the things
Oh,
that he continues to go through. We have a series dedicated to fantasy, paranormal romance, and urban fantasy. So we mix it up, but our roots are paranormal romance. So that's what started it. And then after that, I'm like, I like to read a lot of things. I want more. So then I'm like, well, I will find a co host to talk to me about thriller and mystery. And so we split it. So we have one episode a month of thriller and mystery title and one episode or more of paranormal romance or urban fantasy. So you'll find any combination of those things. I have two lovely co hosts that join me and we chit chat and have a good time. And it's like listening to your favorite book club with some
I
drinks,
love
maybe.
those. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I know it's not boozy, but I've got my coffee right next to me. So I always bring a drink whatever podcast episode you're listening to, I'm drinking something.
Yeah, me too. I have my water. I have H2O today, so I'm being
Good for
good.
you.
But
Good for you. I had no idea that you had your roots in paranormal romance, though, for the
Mhm.
podcast. That's so exciting. So is it safe to say that you're a longtime romance reader, or what's been your experience with the genre?
Well, okay, so let me tell you, I started reading romance. I want to say high school. I've always kind of gravitated toward it, like with Anne of Green Gables. I like the little romance in it and stuff like
Mm.
that. But my older cousin, who is 10 years older than me, she had like Fern Michaels and Sandra Brown and all that stuff on her shelf. And I would take it and read it. So in high school, I was devouring romance like no one's business. But then I'm like, well, I wanted something a little different. So I gravitated to vampires and werewolves.
Naturally.
Naturally, I upped the ante and then I fell in love with paranormal romance.
I feel like vampires and werewolves, especially, were a gateway for a lot of people into paranormal romance. And as much as I hate to credit them, I do credit a large portion of that to Twilight, just as I do with 50 Shades of Grey being a gateway for a lot of people into the romance genre, especially the kinkier BDSM side of romance.
Hmm.
So love it or hate those books, they still brought in a whole group of readers to those genres.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this is good or bad, but I did really like the Twilight series when I read it back then.
I
I
did
don't
too.
I don't know if it would hold up today. I've never reread it, but when I read it the first time through, I loved it and watched all those movies. By the
hmm
way,
hmm Oh no, and I will still watch that. I feel like every month or so there's some kind of marathon on TV of them. And do I usually turn it on? Absolutely.
yes,
Like I
yes.
I know it's awful. I still watch it. In fact, I was so jealous because I spend most of my day that I'm not working on TikTok these days. And I did see, I think it was in Australia, where they had a like 24-hour overnight Twilight movie marathon where you showed
Mm,
up at like 6 p.m. and they screened all the movies back to back through the night,
wow.
until, like 6 or 7 a.m. like the next day. And oh, it looked like so much fun because people are yelling at the screen and they're saying the lines along with the actors. They're cheering for
Oh,
Charlie, Bella's dad, because as grown adults we now recognize what a zaddy he is, that we didn't see when we
right,
were like 13.
right, right.
Oh, I would kill to go to something like that. And I actually live relatively close to where they filmed Twilight. So you do
Oh,
get
that's cool.
people who will come through the area specifically on these like Twilight tours, and like they want to go see all the different sites or whatever. So I've seen Bella Swan's house, I've seen the Cullens house. It's somebody's house, so it's really not that exciting, especially for them, the people who live there, I'm sure.
I
But
know.
if you're a fan, it is something fun to do if you're in the Oregon area.
Oh my gosh, that's fun. Oh, well, I'll have to remember that for next time because I was out there, but I didn't get a chance to do anything fun like that. That sounds fun to me.
Yeah, next time we will do our own self-guided Twilight tour.
Okay, I'm gonna remember that. Got it.
I love it. Well, I wish I had known you were such a paranormal romance fan, and I would have chosen a paranormal romance for us to discuss. Yeah. Although maybe it's good we're branching out. We're giving you something outside of your typical read to check out.
Yeah, I don't read too much contemporary romance, and when I do, I kind of like to level it up again. It usually has a lot more sexy time things going on. So this was light and sweet.
I will say, as much as I love reading new to me authors and reading books that, because people ask me all the time how I choose books for the podcast, and I tell them it's a combination of things that I just want to read. I just want to read this book, or I want to check out this author that's been recommended to me, or I've engaged with on social media, whatever it might be. But also, I do want to find a broad range of tropes, of subgenres. I want to make sure I'm getting my diverse rep in there. So this was one where I hadn't read our author. I hadn't read the book. And I knew just by looking at the cover, I was like, I don't know if this is going to have the heat level that I necessarily prefer in my romance. However, that's not going to deter me from reading it, but I know that it will for some people. So I will just go ahead and say that today's book that we are going to be talking about is 100% sex-free. I mean, you're getting some steamy kisses. You do get a few kisses, like a little hot and heavy makeout. But that's as far as it goes. So if that's not your bag, totally fine. However, I don't necessarily, if I hear that about a book, it's not something that necessarily pulls me out of reading it. I know personally I like to know that going in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind it either. Just like you, I like to be prepared. So I'm not like, well, say something, do something. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, you're sharing a hotel room together. What? Right. This is optimum time for fucking. Like, what is going on?
Exactly. Y'all got one bed. Get in it.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, there you go. There's the perfect introduction for the book that we're going to be discussing today. And that is Stirring Up Love by Chandra Blumberg. And this contemporary rivals to lovers romance, although calling them lovers is being generous, was published just recently, July 2022. It's available on Amazon for free with Kindle Unlimited, so that's a great bet. And I have to give a special thanks to Chandra for actually providing an advanced copy for me. Thank you so much for that. I do just want to mention this is also the second book in the Taste of Love series, though you can 100% read Stirring Up Love as a standalone. I actually hadn't read the first book in the series. I remember seeing it make the rounds on social media and on Goodreads, and it looks super cute, and I do want to check it out, but you do not have to read that book to read Stirring Up Love. Last thing I do just want to mention before we dive into the synopsis, and that is a few minor content warnings. There is mention of the foster system as well as parental abandonment. There's also a brief mention of cancer, although all of that happens off the page before the story begins. There's just discussions about it and how it's affected each of the characters. So keep that in mind and take care of yourself while reading. But before I give you the synopsis, I did just want to ask if you have a paranormal romance rec that you wanted to share, Tamara. And it could be something from Shelf Addiction or just something that you think of time and time again. But as we're heading closer and closer towards spooky season, I definitely want to amp up my paranormal romance reading.
Well, actually, we're starting a reread of the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I think that it's paranormal romance, but it kind of sways a little more toward urban fantasy, so it's not as spicy. Okay. But the couple, just perfection. Chef's kiss, you guys. And it's like about this woman who is a shifter, and she shifts into a coyote, and she was raised with wolves. So her people are wolves. And of course there's vampires and fae. And I just really I've read it. This would be my third time rereading this series,
Oh,
and a
wow.
brand new book comes out this August, the 13th book. So
Oh,
yes, I love it, and I always recommend it to people. And so it's kind of mild on the heat at first. It gets more intense as the books go on.
mm-hmm,
But this, I love a strong heroine, and she is
mm-hmm.
that. And her mate, he's hot. So yes,
I mean, if you're raised amongst wolves, you have to
yes,
be a strong woman. Like,
yes,
that's, that's 13 books. Wow. Yeah. You have to really love a series to like make that commitment. And you've made that commitment multiple times. So
yes.
that speaks to the power of this series.
Yes, start with book one is Moon Called. It's very,
Okay.
very good. You've got to let me know if you give it a try.
Okay. I don't know if I can promise 13 books. I don't know if I
Yeah.
have 13 books in me, but I will give the first one a go and I will let
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, please do. I hope you like it. Cross my fingers.
Oh, no, I love it. Honestly, paranormal is probably the genre I read the least of in romance, and it's not even that I dislike it. I guess I just never really know. I never really know where to start, and I don't necessarily want to dive into a series with like 10 plus books a lot of the time, just because then I feel like I have to read all of them, and I know that I am not a patient reader, and I probably won't. So, no, I'm a fan. I do love urban fantasy, though. I have noticed, because fantasy itself is so much world building that sometimes I can't wrap my brain around it. I think it's incredible, anybody who writes it. But urban fantasy, I can connect to a little bit more, just because of the modern element of,
Yes.
like it takes place in New Orleans, or
Yes.
I can get that part of it.
And this series takes place in your neck of the woods.
Stop.
It does. It does. Mostly. It's also in other parts of the country. But yeah, a lot of time is spent in your neck of the woods out there.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of time.
Okay. I
So
might
if you want
have to
something
do
shorter, do it. But if you want something shorter, I have a really cute trilogy that you might like. It does lean a little more paranormal romance because of the hot couple thing. But the Hidden Legacy series by Ilona Andrews. If you
Yes.
haven't read that, it's really good. It's cute. It also has an urban fantasy vibe, but the romance is kicked up a lot.
No, that's great. I haven't read that specific series, but I've read Ilona Andrews before. And I really enjoy her writing.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah, so there you go. Well, great. I mean, I know that today's read has absolutely zero to do with paranormal or fantasy. In fact, it's all about barbecue, reality TV, and road trips with your enemy. However, obviously we want to build up those TBR lists, especially, like I said, as we're heading towards spooky season, or my favorite month of the year, Cocktober. And, just got to make sure everybody's got something spicy and paranormal to read. So thank you for those recommendations.
Oh my God, Cocktober. I love it.
If I can make it dirty, I will.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Anyway. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into a synopsis for Stirring Up Love, and then we will return after that with our discussion. So here we go. After doing her time in corporate Chicago, Simone Blake paused. I just love that name. Simone Blake. Like, she sounds like an old time news reporter, like, or somebody like out of like Spider-Man, like that works at like the
Yes.
news office, like Simone Blake reporting for Channel 4 News.
Yes.
Anyway,
It does.
she's not in the news. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but after doing her time in corporate Chicago, not in the news, Simone Blake returns to small town Illinois to tackle a new venture, her grandfather's barbecue restaurant. The secret, as they say, is in the sauce.
Is it? I don't know. Okay, sorry.
I didn't remember reading that the first time around. That's so funny. I feel like synopses always have to have a little bit of cheese ball in them. So, like, I'm here for it. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Simone's plan is to sell Honey and Hickory's signature sauce to put her hometown on the map. But she's not the only one with a recipe and a plan. Chef Finn Rhimes from nearby Springfield has a similar vision. To jumpstart his dream of opening a culinary school, he shows up at the local farmer's market with his own barbecue sauce. When Simone's plan to outsell Finn falls flat, she auditions for a reality show to pitch her brand. But she's horrified to discover Finn's had the same idea. As Simone and Finn wage barbecue war on television, their feud turns into an undeniable attraction. With their livelihoods on the line, it may not be so much about making the best sauce, but finding their way to each other.
Oh, so cute.
It's always that last line of every synopsis for a romance novel that's like the
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so let's start with overall impressions. Just, considering the book as a whole, what do you think?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was lighthearted, and I had a good time with their banter, pretty much. I always do enjoy, like, when two people are able to rib each other really good. I love that.
Did you just say rib in a barbecue book?
I did. No pun intended. I don't know. Oh my gosh.
Don't get saucy, Tamara.
No, right? But yeah, I like their banter. I think so. Overall, I had a good time with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did too. I agree. I obviously, have my petty notes as per usual, but I thought it was a super fun read. I think if you're super into reading like food porn, like I am, I love cooking shows. I love any book that I can get my hands on that has some kind of like cooking competition or a bakery shop or anything. I am here for it. And I actually hadn't, at least to the best of my memory, I don't remember actually ever reading one that is about barbecue. So I found that refreshing, that instead of it being, a bar that's in trouble or a bakery, it was barbecue. And it wasn't so much necessarily a business in trouble so much as somebody taking the helm and inheriting this business that they've always had a thing for and wanting to revitalize it and make it even better. And that's what we see with Simone. And then with Finn, he does have this, killer barbecue sauce recipe that he wants to sell, but really it's not even about that. It's about him doing that to make the money in order to launch this, what I think is actually a fantastic idea, is a culinary school for people who are perhaps homeless or rehabilitated or sober addicts. I think that's an incredible idea. And if that's not already a thing, it should be.
Yeah, it is a great idea, like second chance type thing. And culinary, like that's a great like field to be in. And I'm an appreciator of food. If you guys know anything, well, you don't know anything about me. You're new to me, but I love food. And I have a foodie Instagram. I'm all about that food. So these descriptions and barbecue and sauce, I'm like, ooh, that would be so delicious. So I absolutely could dig all the food vibes going on in this book. And yeah, I'm about it. So 100% love that part.
Yeah, there were sometimes like several pages in a row where you would get zero dialogue and it would be 100% descriptions of like what they were cooking. And I'm just like, oh my God, okay, I need a sandwich, because it just, it was so descriptive. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about the book in general is I really loved Chandra Blumberg's writing. I loved the descriptions. Like you said, I think there was some great banter. I would be really interested. First of all, I do want to read the other book in the series that has a very minor connection with this one, in that the characters from that book are getting married in this book. And that's sort of like a subplot in the second half of the story. But I would just want to read it because I really enjoyed her writing style. And I'm curious to see what comes next, because I feel like there were a few other characters that I was scoping out where I was like, ooh, I hope he gets a romance. Or,
nice.
I hope she gets one too.
Finn's best friend, the guy who set him up. Yes, Darius. He should get a romance.
I want him, and I want him to fall in love with Meg. I think it was Meg, the one who like where she has the ranch where Simone like keeps her horses and everything. Like I was like, ooh, maybe them. I'm not sure, but Darius, I really want to get a book.
Honestly, there's an opening for it because now they can meet at the wedding. They can meet at the wedding.
Yeah. No, and they would be perfect in my mind together because Meg was like a little more free-spirited, like has her horses, lives on a ranch, and Darius is like suit and tie, realtor, businessman, luxury lifestyle. So that is such a clash, and I am here for that. Yes. But we're not about to write your books for you, Chandra. Like we're just looking forward to
we're just giving ideas. Just ideas, that's all.
Whatever comes next.
Right.
So let's talk about each of the characters, let's start with Finn, because you know what I always find really interesting is I feel like when I read a romance that's specifically about a man and a woman that is usually written by a woman, I always kind of expect to identify more with the female character or expect there to be like a lot more nuance to the female character. And that's not to say that Simone's character didn't have that, but right. I was so much more drawn to Finn like throughout the book.
I definitely liked Finn's character as a person more than Simone. I found him, I thought he was easier to relate to, although I don't know. I love strong female characters, as I mentioned earlier, and I would think that Simone would have been it for me, but she wasn't for some reason.
No, that's exactly how I felt too, because I am always drawn, and I talk about this all the time on the podcast, on TikTok, in, you know, all sorts of things where I say that we definitely treat our female characters with a different lens. We usually hold them to higher standards than we do our male characters. And I kept trying to check myself and ask myself, why is it that I'm not connecting with her? Because I think on some level, if you were reading this at a very, you know, you didn't want to look into it or analyze it in any way, I think you could very much look at Simone and be like, God, she's a bitch. Like, what's her deal?
Yes.
And I was like, okay, nope, we're not going to do that. We are going to pull back and we are going to think about this a little more critically. And I would be reminded, okay, no, I do understand. I understand where she's coming from in that she feels like she is never given the opportunity or trusted to do things on her own. Like it's somebody always has to step in to help, or she's always kind of feels like a stranger in her own home because everybody else is leaving. And so I did understand where some of those feelings and actions she took were coming from in that way. But I guess for me, it was just that Finn was such a nice guy. Like, he was. Through and through, like other than the one encounter they have on TV, of course, together, where they just go back and forth.
Oh, he comes insults. For her a little bit. I'm like,
he totally does. Yeah. And he's not without fault in this book. Like, let me tell you, but I just felt like throughout the book, he never really had malintentions in any way. Like he wanted this money to launch his business. When it's offered to him and Simone, his goal is, okay, I'm going to try to make this work as best I can and like bring us together. You know, even at the farmer's market, it's not like he's trying to sabotage her business, like by going around giving out samples of his barbecue sauce. Whereas I felt like all of her actions were always to put him down, not bring them together or lift either of them up. And it just always felt very self-centered to me, like throughout the book.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with Finn, though, he felt a little judgy at times. Yeah. Like he would instantly hear something Simone said and be like, oh, she's like that. Ugh. And then later he'd be like, oh, I didn't realize it was also this and also that. But to defend him, he also came back and apologized.
Yeah.
Simone also had those moments where she, and a lot of her issues I feel like were self-inflicted.
Yes.
So no one likes me. I have to prove myself. And Finn's like, everyone loves you. What are you talking about? So like,
Yeah.
it's her own point of view. It's self-inflicted. And it took her a long time to be like, well, maybe I might not have this right. But Finn, he had it, So he like, I don't know. I just think he was just overall more open to her.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. And I think for him, I was more willing to excuse any time he lashed out because of his background and his circumstances and the fact that he was very much like in survival mode, like 24/7.
Yes.
And that's not to say she didn't have a traumatic background either, because we learned that she lost her mother at a very early age, and that her dad basically abandoned her and she was left to be raised by her grandparents. So they clearly have a good amount of trauma and baggage that they are carrying. And I think we're led to believe that that's the reason that they lash out, and like they're out to save themselves at any given moment, which makes sense. I mean, I
Absolutely.
100% understand that. But it just felt like he would take a step forward and she would take a step back. I never really saw her kind of gradually coming together with him. Like throughout the entire story, she is so anti sharing this money. She is so anti sharing anything with him. And he kind of tries to approach it with different ideas. Like maybe we can do this, maybe this can happen. And in the end that she's going to, of course, have to change in some way, but it didn't feel like a gradual change to me. It felt like a complete 180 at the end.
See, I think Simone is just not very verbal with her emotions. She's more show, not tell. So, for example, when Finn was sick,
I
right?
love
He
that
realized,
scene.
he realized, wow, she actually went and bought some cups and some tea, and she's back here
She
trying to take care
buys
of
him
me.
cactus pajama pants. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
that's an act of love right there.
Right. Even though she's saying to your face, I hate you, but then she does these things.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like I do think about like when we talk about like the 5 love languages, that everybody has different ways of expressing their love, and like she very much does, especially in that scene, it's acts of service. Like she does these things to show that she cares. And that was the scene where I really loved it, because I was like, oh, this feels like a huge turning point in their relationship. And so I guess it still moves forward from there, but I wanted to see like a little more emotional growth from her moving forward from that point. And it still felt like there was still like some backsliding like throughout. But I give me a character sick and somebody having to take care of them any day. It is one of my favorite tropes to read. I don't care if it's a man that's sick, if it's a woman that's sick. I love it.
Really?
I
Well, it's
love
definitely
it.
cute. It opens up like the possibility of seeing how caring she is.
Yes.
And, it's like it makes it more real, I think, because if you really despise someone, you don't sit over there on that couch, you'll figure it out. Here's some water. Like,
Yeah. No, I happen to love a good sick bed or injury scene. And let me tell you, this book is packed full of tropes that I love. There is a road trip, which of course just naturally implies forced proximity. There is an only one bed, although they also stay at another hotel where they get separate hotel rooms. And I was like, wait a second,
Why?
we're breaking the rules.
Yeah.
There is them being snowed in and having to deal with weather. There is a wedding. And of course, some last minute, we have to work together to like make this wedding go off without a hitch. Obviously, there's the cooking. There is a reality TV competition. It's really a lot. Like,
There's a lot going on.
Don't mind that. Like, I love all of these things. I will say I do think the book was a little bit too long, personally. I felt like maybe we were trying to pack in too many things. But I also understand from a writer standpoint, I'm doing something similar with the holiday novella I'm working on right now, and it's a novella. Like, I'm basically picking all the things I love in romance and throwing it into what is supposed to be a 30,000 word novella.
You're like, I like all these holiday things. Let's throw it all in there. We're doing all of it.
100%. That is exactly my train. I'm like, what's the story? I don't care. I just want them to go to holiday parties and bang. Like, that's it.
But that sounds fun. That sounds fun, though. But yeah, but this couple, though, they even had, like, of course, the typical overhearing of conversations. You know, that whole thing.
One of my least favorite misunderstandings.
And then he runs away. I'm like, that is one critique about Finn. I wish he were a little more alpha and less beta. He seems real beta to me.
Which I actually like a lot about the story, in that I just am so sick of reading alpha heroes. But I don't think that means that somebody who's not an alpha hero shouldn't be able to face their issues head on.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can do that and still not be the alpha aggressor. Like, because she very much is the one in control throughout the story. And I don't mind that. I happen to like their dynamic a lot of the time. And I like that he defers to her, that he's like, I'm not trying to be the head chef in your kitchen. Like,
he's not trying to be the head anything. I mean, even when at the end and they get proposed to each other, basically, she proposes first, and then he proposes, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to mess up your, and he's like, oh no, I know how important that is to you.
But in fact, when I saw her like go into her little store, and I was like, oh God, I know that we're like gearing up towards like what'll probably be like a proposal or some kind of HEA here, and when I saw that she was making the speech, I was like, wait a second, is she going to be the one to propose? And then I thought about it, and I was like, actually, considering like their relationship dynamic, that makes perfect sense to me that she's the one doing it, because she very much goes for what she wants. Like, she's the one that initiates their kisses. She's the one who, is got this timetable for not only their trip, but like, this is what my life is supposed to look like it needs to be perfect. So I totally bought that. I do like that there was a little flip where it's like he was going to propose as well, and she gets her ring and a puppy. They're
both exchanging gifts that were not discussed. So that's like, as a married person, I would have a cow if my spouse brought me a dang Ontini home. Or a puppy.
I will say, look, here's the thing. I am somebody where I'm like, if you're making any major lifetime decisions, like all of my friends who have gotten married, most of them have had conversations previously with their partner before they got engaged. That was very much like, here is the ring I want. Here is what I want to make sure we're doing. Like, I have a friend who gave her fiance a timeline and was like, we got to lock this shit down by this time. And I appreciate that, because it's you're having conversations about it. You're making it clear what it is you want and your intentions. But to bring a whole fucking house on wheels and be like, I'm proposing to you. Here's a key to our home that I bought for you. It's cute, but it's not for me.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. I mean, even him, I understand he's never had his own home, so he's probably grateful for anything.
It was cute. Yeah.
But I'm like, hell no. Do not come up in here. I mean, maybe that's the alpha in me. Do not come up in this mug with no teeny home that I have not seen, discussed.
Yeah, no. I had it been that she had just bought a plot of land for them to like build a house on, I would have been like, great, that works for me. I do think it is cute that I thought it was funny that she got a tiny house. Although I did think it was kind of cute that they related it back to something that he said very early on, where it's like he basically lives out of his car, so it's his house on wheels. And, Darius, who helped bring this tiny house into existence, is like, yeah, it's another house on wheels, except this one has a shower. And I was like, okay, that's cute. I do like that for them, but
Yes.
if this was me, nope.
I'm like, so where are you going to put it? In the back of your restaurant? No, thank you.
With your dog. There's going to be
Right.
a dog in there.
Oh my gosh. No, pass. No, thank you. But if they love it, I love it. Whatever.
Like, I like tiny house hunters as much as the next person, but every time I see an episode where it's like a family of 4 and they have their dog, I'm just like,
Oh,
what
no.
are you doing? What are you doing?
On top of each other with dog hair everywhere. I cannot.
Yeah.
I can't. And where would I put my bookshelves? I don't have. How could you put bookshelves in there?
You're gonna have to
can't.
hide your books amongst like the kitchen cupboard and like lift up the bench seat and there's more in there, and like in the bathroom, like, oh, look at this secret cubby behind the toilet. Ooh, we can put some books in there. Like
it's gonna be like that show, the Teeny House show, where they're like, they build the thing and they're like, go through all your stuff and pick 20 books. You're like, what?
No.
Have you seen that show where they're like pare down everything?
Yeah, Marie Kondo, who's like, you should like have like one book on your nightstand. I'm like, one book a night? Like, I'm confused. Like, what are you talking
Marie,
about?
We're not friends, Marie. We're not friends. If you're gonna tell me to have one book, we're not friends.
Absolutely not. Another thing that I thought was interesting that they touched on was because, and it's a very short conversation, but because they each have a very interesting upbringing, I liked that there was a brief moment where they talked about kids, and it wasn't even necessarily them as a couple. It was just kind of like this hypothetical situation of like, where do you see yourself with children? Or I forget how it even came up, but they both kind of said that they're like, well, I'm not really interested in that. And he told her something about how she could adopt, and it brought up, some past with like him being in the foster care system. But I always am excited to see discussions about things beyond the nuclear, however we say it, family.
Yes.
That's just like, we have to get married, have kids, have this house, 2.5 children and a dog.
I love when I see happy couples, a happily ever after that doesn't involve kids. Now, I personally am one of those child-free by choice people. And so I love to see it. Like, I love kids. I love my nieces and nephews like they were my own, right? I love babies, but just I don't want any of my own. And I can relate, and I get happy when I see, oh, wow, it's other people like you. Everyone likes to see themselves reflected in a little bit in some way.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that this author kind of said, well, they might or they might not, but they're not especially like, oh, I'm baby happy, baby crazy. Let's have some babies. I'm like, oh,
right.
That's refreshing.
Yeah, this book in general, I think, reflects a lot of millennial and Gen Z ideas, just in that, like, almost everybody is an independent business owner. Like, all of the characters have, like, launched their own businesses. A lot of them aren't necessarily married with kids. That's also not the intention of our two main characters. So they live in a tiny house by the end. It's not even like, oh, we're going to, buy this giant mansion. We're two business owners and we don't have that much money, but you know what we can do? This tiny house. And I really liked that. Like I said, there were a lot of pieces in this book, like between the tropes, the characters, just the overall vibes, the banter, like that I really liked. And so it makes me curious to see what else Chandra will write.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I just would have loved just a little bit of spice, just a little, just give
you and me both.
Yeah. I just wanted more.
Yeah,
of that.
You and me both. I will say, when thinking about, typically we would read a steamy sexcerpt on the show, and I don't have one because there isn't any. However, I did highlight a scene where they kiss. I think this is the second or third time they kiss when they're on the road trip and he backs her in like against the car. And I did think that was pretty hot just because I love a good like let me push you up against the whatever.
Yeah.
So
Was
let me
that
just
chapter 26?
25. Yeah.
Because I'm like, did we pick the same one?
Probably. I'm curious. So, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
No,
and
you
we'll
go
see
ahead.
if it's the same one. But
Yeah, you go ahead.
So I started it from she reached the car, nowhere left to run, nowhere to hide from her feelings. Simone, that voice, Finn's voice, the oral version of a welcome home sign at the airport, scrawled in big, sloppy letters, a hug in auditory form. First of all, beautiful. What an incredible like comparison. I love that. She turned and Finn was right there, his eyes darkened to pools of deepest midnight, his chest heaving. One breath, two. When their lips collided, it was a gale meeting a hurricane. A whirlwind consumed her. Finn's kiss, custom made to sweep her off her feet. She yielded to the press of his lips and his fingers cupped her jaw, slid down her neck in a caress. In an instant, he had her backed up against the car. An inevitable force, this need between them. Greedy and insistent, she rocked up against his body, deepening the kiss, breathing him in like oxygen, drinking him down like the sweetest water. He moaned, and all of a sudden, his hands clasped under her thighs. He lifted her up and stepped impossibly closer. Pressed against the car door, she wrapped her legs around him, tucked her heels against his back, and gripped tight as they chased this yearning into uncharted waters. And they kissed for a little bit longer, but God.
That is the best. That is actually, that was like the sexiest thing in the whole entire book.
Yeah. Like when they get to the cabin before he gets sick, they do have, again, a little more of a makeout. And this time he doesn't have a shirt on. So like, woohoo. But it was just such a beautiful description that I was like, man, it's almost worth it not having sex in this book. Like if this is the description I get of just a kiss, like that's, it makes me wonder what the sex scenes would look like.
I'm like, oh, that sex will probably be amazing.
Incredible. Yeah. So
yeah, that was a really good scene though. Like I think one of my favorites actually.
Yeah, I liked that one a lot. I do wish there had been maybe something a little steamier, even if it had led to like a closed door. But, again, I'm not here to tell you how to write your book. I will say one of the other lines I highlighted, not sexy at all, I just think it's hysterical, is I am not dying in Oklahoma of all places.
Understood.
Oh,
that's
so
funny.
Good.
Oh my gosh. I mean, he gets sick. Was that after he got sick and he because he jumped in the lake or whatever? He jumped in some water.
Yeah.
Oh,
I forget if it was after that or if it was when they were driving their convertible through a rainstorm and it fills up with water. Like they just kept having every road trip thing that could go wrong. And okay, again, though, this kind of ties back to Simone's character, was because she was just so dang stubborn all the time. She would make these choices like, oh, we're going to rent a convertible. And I'm just like, what? Like, what? Where are you coming up with the thought that this would be a good idea? And he tells her it's winter. She's like, yeah, but we're in Los Angeles. We're driving across the country. Oh, I didn't think about that. I'm like, you cannot tell me that this woman has a head for business and has brought herself up and is so incredible at what she does and plans ahead, and she does not understand how weather works in a convertible.
No, that's what I thought. I'm like, this does not make sense. But okay, I'll take it. I'll just go with it. But she should have known better.
Yeah, there were a few choices like that where it's interesting because we find out that she used to work in the city being Chicago, and had like a marketing job and everything. And so there were times where she would make specific choices that felt very like luxury, and I just was a little confused by that, considering she left that and moved back to her small town and like genuinely wanted to be there. Like she wanted to be in her small town and she wants to revitalize it and she loves it. So the fact that she kept choosing these things that were very like luxury items, I don't know. It didn't really, it would have made sense to me if it was like somebody who was a born and bred city girl and like they didn't want to leave the big city and they want all the amenities of the big city. But I didn't get that vibe from her most of the time. So yeah, those were kind of ones that stuck out to me as like, it didn't really seem to vibe with her character.
Yeah, because I think I just mostly got the vibe that she just wanted to be successful at all costs, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever her definition of success meant. And that may not necessarily mean luxury items. I think she just wants to be, I guess, praised, pat on the back, something like that.
You did it. Yeah. No, and that's the thing is I feel like sometimes she didn't know what her version of success was. And because of that, it was unclear to us as readers. Because we would think, does she think success is about these material items? Or does she think success is about her grandfather loving what she's done with the family business? Like, so it was some like confusion, I think there. But I have to say, I love when you read a book and like the jobs or the ideas that the characters have in the book are things that you would love to see in real life. Like I loved his school idea and I loved her idea to have this sort of maker's marketplace that sold local goods by artisans. And they, of course, bring both of those to a reality eventually. It just takes us a long time to get there and kind of in a roundabout way. But that being said, I like this world. I also kind of love that it, I'm a former Chicago girl. I love that it takes place outside of the city in like rural Illinois, because I feel like that's something that I never read. So you're a Midwest girl, so I'm sure you like just a Midwest vibe in general.
I do. But you know what I also noticed at the end of this book? There were 2 significant time jumps. Like there was a year in between. I'm like, okay, wasn't it like 2 years passed over like the end of the book?
Yeah, because what's interesting is in the beginning, we started the farmer's market in the summer. And then when they're both accepted to the TV show, we jumped to December. Yes. And then the drive across the country is all taking place during December leading up to the wedding. And I think the story would then end at the end of December or beginning of January. But then in the epilogue, it's a year later, and it's like the following summer. So yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, I think the pacing was a little iffy for me in that sometimes we would jump like far ahead in so early on in the story, but then the bulk of the rest of the story takes place in the span of a few days. Like, it's just, it's a little off to me.
The spacing,
it feels like somebody wanting to put everything they want into the book. And I get it. I do. But that was probably my biggest overall note, was just that while I enjoyed all the moving pieces, I don't know if they all fit together. Case in point, the like dark moment where they have their little breakup. I marked it. It happens 87% of the way into the story on my Kindle. Okay. And that felt very late. So, I don't know. Overall though, really loved the writing. You even heard that the sex scene that wasn't a sex scene is still very sexy.
Yeah, very.
So I'm excited for more, and I hope we get Darius.
Yes. I mean, obviously, if it's a couple years later again, or a year later again, I mean, because it's going to take a year to plan the wedding, so maybe it'll be another year past, and her
Who knows?
sister and her husband would have had a baby.
They'll have like
from
3
the bakery.
kids.
Yeah, like, from the first book, they got kids now. And now the second wedding. Yeah.
The dog has had puppies. They have
Yes.
like a big house in addition to their tiny house. So yeah, who knows? Time definitely works differently in this series, but I chalk it up to romance reasons a lot of the time. I'm like, why did that happen? Oh, romance reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. Because I could see why she might want to skip some time, because they were literally at each other's throats. So for us to believe now they're like going to get married and they're so in love, maybe some time has to pass.
And that's, if you, I know some people don't like epilogues in general. I personally could take them or leave them. But if you want that, like, wrap it up with a bow and usually a ring or a baby kind of ending, it usually does take place 6 months to a year in the future. So that it's fine. It's fine. Like I said, I'll be interested to see if we do get more books in the series and when those take place and who they will be about. So here's hoping it's Darius, because I want more Darius.
I'll cross my fingers for you.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up by giving this book some ratings. And here on Boobies and Newbies, we rate for heart, humor, and heat, because I like alliteration. So let's actually start with heat, because I feel like I'm torn on this one. Usually, for me personally, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could be, I usually give a book with an open door, at least one open door sex scene, a 5 out of 10. It's got to be at least an open door for it to warrant a 5. So this isn't even like a closed door sex scene. Like, there is no, allusion to them having sex behind closed doors.
No, legs closed.
Firmly shut. Now, they do have some steamy kisses, so I do appreciate that. So I don't know if sometimes I do a non-applicable rating. I think I might give it like maybe a 2, just because there is, I think, a little bit of heat versus some books I have reviewed for the podcast where they don't have anything except a kiss at the very end. So I'm going to give it a 2 for me personally on that scale.
Okay, well, I feel like this was maybe a hair past a G rating, so I'm going to give it a 1. I mean, like, I think a 13-year-old could have read this and had a good time with it. So.
100%. And honestly, I was thinking about it. I don't even really remember there being any sort of like swearing or anything like that.
No.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, how about let's focus on the heart and the humor then. Starting with heart on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think?
Well, I think it did have a good amount of heart. I believed that they could fall in love. I believed that, I just believed them as a couple. So I'll say 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and for me, I always also kind of extend the heart beyond the couple too. And I think anytime you bring family in, there's automatically this extra element of heart. And I think we get a good amount of heart from not only her family, but also both of their found families. Like, he has this incredible found family from the people in his restaurant that he works with and Darius and everything. And so I think the heart is definitely going to be the highest rating I give for this one. And I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of heart in this one.
Yeah, I forgot, like, even Simone's, like, brother-in-law, her brand new brother-in-law was like, like, kind of taking up and seeing what his deal was, and the father and the mother kind of grilling him and looking at him sideways. I thought that was all fun.
I thought it was great. I liked that when we did eventually get to the wedding, and I'm glad we did, because the one thing I hate is when people like talk about an event and then we never actually get to see the event. So I am happy that we actually got to spend some time at the wedding. But I'm glad that, when we get there, it's not just them furthering the main character's, love story. Like, they actually have their own thing going on. There's a wedding going on, and I liked that a lot. So yeah, I'm going to stick with a 7.5. Humor, I'm curious. I want to hear your thoughts on this because we both have mentioned banter, and I think banter usually does play into humor.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think there might have been 1 or 2 times I reacted audibly. For me, that means a lot. When you can get me to actually say, oh my God, out loud, or, oh, that's crazy, or I laugh or something. If I react audibly, that says a lot. And I think there were a few instances of that. So I definitely wouldn't say this was like a thigh-slapping comedy of a book or anything like that. But there was some humor there. So I actually would give it a 6 out of 10 on humor.
That's what I said too, was a 6. I was like, it's definitely on the second half, like the higher half of comedy. However, it's by no means a rom-com. Like, it's not thigh slapping good times.
Right.
But I mean, just the line about dying in Oklahoma, I'm like, ha, made me laugh.
Right.
Sorry to anybody who lives in Oklahoma, but honestly, not sorry.
Yeah. Right.
So,
I co-sign.
Yeah. Love it. So, well, great. Awesome. Well, I'm really glad you stepped outside of your, typical paranormal fantasy, urban fantasy thriller to read something contemporary that was not as sexy as I think both of us would have hoped, but still enjoyable nonetheless, and full of good food. So thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me to read it. I wouldn't have picked it up otherwise, so I'm glad I was able to read it.
Yeah, me too. So moving forward in the world of romance, is there something you haven't read yet that you're curious about, whether it's a specific trope or a subgenre? Like, is there something you want to read more of in romance?
Well, recently I've been doing this thing where I will try to take a book talk recommendation. And, book talk is heavily romance and a little erotica lately. So I've been picking up a book talk thing and seeing what do I think about this? So I had my very first reverse harem book. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Title?
And I actually... Oh, let me find the title. Why did I forget the title that fast? I read it 2 months ago. I'll tell you momentarily. Hold, please.
Well, and interesting, while you're looking that up, interestingly enough, while we're recording this, there's actually a really great discourse that's going on Book Talk right now about the term reverse harem, which is something that I talked about on the podcast probably 2 or 3 years ago, that I don't like the term reverse harem, and I find it problematic, not as a genre, not in terms of the stories that are happening, but just the origins of the word harem and the fact that we apply that. And so lo and behold, this is a conversation that's happening on Book Talk as we speak. And I think the overall new term that people are starting to gravitate towards is why choose? Because
why choose? Okay.
Yeah, because why choose when you can have all of the options before you? So
okay, so the book I read was Faking with Benefits by Lily Gold.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
I think, does it have a really cute cartoon cover?
It does. And people were like, don't be tricked by the cover. It's sexy. And the cover is cartoony.
Yep. In fact, I have saved this one to read because of that. I saw the cover. It's an illustrated cartoon cover, but there happen to be 3 men on it and 1 woman. And I was like, I'm so confused by this in general. And then when I read more about it and everybody talking about how it's super spicy and that it's why choose, I guess it would be MMMF romance.
Yes.
I was like, hold up, this beautiful illustrated cover? Okay. So...
And I find it funny. Like I said, I've never read one of these before. I thought it was pretty spicy.
Okay.
But I feel like I also learned something personally from this book. And I'll just say it. You can bleep me out if I'm not supposed to say this. But personally, I learned that 3 dicks is too many. For me.
Wait, okay. So for you personally, IRL, or for you to read?
No, in real life, I would never have 3 dicks.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I feel like I would lose focus, but
yeah, there's too much going on. I'm like, this isn't fair. Hold on. But
I will say, just looking ahead at the fall schedule that we have for the podcast, I have picked a Why Choose darker romance for Cocktober. It's got a paranormal element to it too.
Oh my gosh. Okay, tell me what that is when it comes up. When you start sharing it, tag me or something so I can see it.
Absolutely. So, and that has also been one that came across my book talk recommendations. So I've got you covered. We've got some more Why Choose coming up in the future, and a little bit of it is actually paranormal. So
all right, because I'm trying to like stretch out my reading chops a little bit and try some other things. So that's why I'm like, book talk, guide me. Let me see if you're any good at recommendations.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and just so you know, there are a lot more book talk recommendations beyond Colleen Hoover. So you just have to wade through.
I read her. No, I read 2 of her books, and to be honest, one of them I loved, and I read it a long time ago.
Okay.
And everyone loves it. What was it? It Begins With Us. I actually really liked it. Mm-hmm. And then I read Verity, and I couldn't understand what the hype was. Everyone loved it, and I'm like, I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, I happen to love book talk in general, although I will say I do find that you get a lot of the same recommendations over and over again, especially when they're coming from people who are newer to reading romance. I love that they're finding books to read and recommend. However, the people that I tend to trust a lot more with their recommendations are authors and book talkers and bloggers who have maybe been reading romance for a longer time. And, look beyond the bestseller table at Barnes and Nobles and can recommend something that's a little more indie or something that might not be on your radar. So, yeah, you can find great recommendations. So, kudos to you for searching them out.
Actually, like I said, I read both of those CH books a long time ago. I'm like, I'm not trying to read any more of that right now. I'm looking for something different, this Lily Gold book. I'm like, she's not a big name, but I'm like, I'm going to try it because people say it's good. So,
yay. I love it. Yeah, for me right now, it's got to be either funny or it's got to be monster dicks. I will take nothing in between. I don't want angst. I don't want sadness. I don't want any of that. I need it to be ha ha ha, or I need it to be hot and horny. And that's pretty much it. Whatever makes you happy.
That's what you gotta do. Just read what you like. And if you don't like it, put it down. No shame in DNFing books. I'm sorry. That's how I feel about it.
I agree, because guess what? There are more books coming out every day. Chances are you will find something you love amongst them. Don't waste your time forcing yourself to read ones that aren't vibing with you. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. We only have so much time to read all of the books.
Absolutely.
Anyway, this has been such a delight, and it's so fun talking to you again. So thank you so much for joining me. And please, before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find and follow you and listen to your podcast.
Awesome. So you guys can find the Shelf Addiction podcast on virtually any podcast platform. Just search it, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Shelf Addiction.
Fantastic. And I guess the best note to leave this on is to remind everybody that hopefully none of us will be dying in Oklahoma today.
I will not. You'll never find me in Oklahoma, but
period. Never. Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.